Now, the next keynote is Franklin Moraes. He's a civil and electronic engineer who has led development teams in private commercial software for scientific applications. He pioneered in the early 1980s the use of finite element methods for structural engineering and microcomputing. And since the 1990s, the development of commercial off-the-shelf private hardware and software systems for smart buildings, urban spaces, and cities. He has been a professor at Porto's Higher Schools of Architecture since 2001, where he also leads a group dedicated to formal methods in architecture. He was also behind the creation of the Formal Methods in Architecture Symposium back in 2011, I think, and has been a key figure in its maintenance and growth over the last 13 years. Today he brings us a talk entitled The Role of AI in the Future of Society, the City, Construction, and Architecture.
In the last years, but much more. I think we thought that that was something that has to be presented here. Some ideas on the relationship between architecture and artificial intelligence. Well, I tried to use artificial intelligence to produce my paper, and it's recorded. It's recorded. I used not my voice, a synthesized voice, and many synthesized images. But well, I come back from that joke, and I'm presenting something more near what is usual in this type of situations. So, well, the presentation, well, this is remnants of the record presentation. It's much less than this. Don't be afraid, or maybe you should. I'm trying to deal with the three situations, three relations between architecture and AI. First is that AI creates new situations in the world that are relevant to the architect, to the city, to the house, and the architect must be ready to deal with that new situations. The second is that architect must introduce the AI tools in what he produces in the built environment. This team I will present only very few topics, and the third, it will be the main one. It's well what we are discussing here, and how the new AI technologies will be adopted by the architects in the profession and the professional practice. Sorry. Okay. Well, since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, labor productivity, the most interesting indicator of development of the human species, is growing exponentially. First, substitution of the source of energies. Second, mechanization. I'm wrong, sorry, again. Yes. First, substitution of the source of energies. Second, mechanization. And third, automation are the precedents of a maybe fourth phase tied to the digital and maybe the AI. Certain is an acceleration of productivity due also to AI. Increasing productivity means more increased production and decreased labor. It therefore seems like a bright future. We will have more wealth and work less and less. In the long presentation, I called attention to some setbacks of the productivity revolution, but I will concentrate now in this one. In the future, if the future is bright, why then those recent strikes of Hollywood workers or American dockers explicitly against the application of AI in their activities? Well, because some fear that less work means not less hours of work, but less employed workers. Well, I am an incorrigible optimist and I believe in the radiant future. But what I believe comes not out of faith, but for scientifically based reasons. There is a paradigmatic historical scene. At the time of Ptolemaic Egypt, Aaron of Alexandria proposed to the pharaoh of Egypt the Aelipil. Is that right, Tassos? A steam engine that made the palace doors open, anticipating the Industrial Revolution by almost 2 millennia. Upon Aaron's presentation, the pharaoh would have argued, "Friend Aaron, this is very nice, but what do I do with my slaves?" Well, we know that many centuries later, Aeolipile developments wiped out slaves. The conjunction of the capitalist mode of production with the Industrial Revolution not only did not need slaves, but slavery was even counterproductive to its development, which, for example, needed free men to its factories and also customers for its products. Generally speaking, the laws of the science of history tell us that the development of productive forces is a trigger for historical development. When this development comes into conflict with the relations of production, it is a productive force that wins. All the present or future Aelipiles will eventually free all the slaves of the present or of the future. That's why I'm optimistic. If our time has to choose between new technologies and their promises on one side, and current production relations on the other, it will maintain technological developments and throw away social relations as always history did. Last day we were talking about the politicians not listening to the researchers. Well, in a historical long-term basis, it's actually the researcher that changed radically the world of the humans. Let's focus on the not so long future consequences of increased productivity for the concerns of architecture. I think they could bring about radical changes. It's time to think about it. The first one is a transformation of the workplace towards automated, assisted, more creative work, in which productivity is not assured at the expense of the physiological, psychological, and social well-being of those who work. Well, the second change arises from ICT and remote worker capabilities, with a significant change in the geographic location of the workplace, which could be anywhere and implies a functional mix of other locations, including the housing. The third Change arises from the increase in free time, which will give rise to new types of human activity with their new architectural programs and important change in the use of the current one. The fourth, and extremely important in terms of city space, is the emergence of autonomous vehicles, which can drastically reduce the city's occupation by motorized vehicles, in addition to freeing humans from millions of hours of driving, reduce emissions, increase road safety. The fifth concerns the application of ICT systems, many of them autonomous and intelligent, to the entire built environment, smart cities and smart buildings, especially for two major changes regarding architecture. First, what is still essentially a set of blockish, static and passive elements and devices is giving way to the appearance of active and changeable systems, responding quickly to changing situations, adjusting in real time to the needs of the customer. And second, the interaction between the built environment and its users is being transformed. Humans act differently. They provide real-time motivations to the built environment, often without explicit declaration by the human, through autonomous perception of artificial agents. They delegate, albeit in an assist manner, the execution and management of the built environment on intelligent machines and maintain and increase exchange of information with those machines. But there are more generic great problems that influence the concerns of the architecture of today, not by direct responsibility of the AI. The first is the accelerated growth of previously dependent economies. The Global South has seen rapid urbanization in recent decades, with the world population reaching the urban majority very recently. According to the UN, in 2020, 3 billion people will require adequate and affordable housing by 2030. And approximately 1 billion people live in informal settlements and slums around the world. The second is that the West has fallen into a recurring situation of economic and financial crisis that has greatly affected the housing sector. The subprime crisis of 2008, which continues today, was just a symptom of the model's deficiency, which has been getting worse. The third is productivity in construction industry. The construction sector, for the reasons that are not yet well studied, is one of the human activities in which the benefits of the Industrial Revolution have been least felt. In mobility, the global cost of transporting a person or a ton of goods per kilometer, including travel times, has decreased thousands of times from classical antiquity to the present day. In clothing, a shirt takes hundreds of times less time for producers to manufacture. In construction, there is nothing like it. Production costs, the time have not changed anything like that in millennia. Mass production, mechanization, automation, and other solutions found in other industries have not reached any of the levels found in these other sectors. The fourth is sustainability. Construction is responsible for the use of most natural resources in weight and volume, and will be the second large transformer of the natural landscape in area, with buildings responsible for 17.5% of emissions with a greenhouse effect, to which we can add those produced by the construction phase, maybe 3%. Urbanism and territorial planning still have some responsibilities with 16% more via transport systems. Last, we could not fail to highlight the situation of war with massive destruction of built heritage, and the million of people who are currently leaving the places where they were rooted, crossing one or more borders, and their weak situations of sheltering in place of origin, destination, and often in transit. Well, this is a small summary of what I just said. Till now, we have seen our first great topic, how AI and other factors change the world, and consequently, what are the concerns of architecture. Let's now deal briefly with the second theme, how architecture uses AI in the world. Looking at everything mentioned in topic 1, it appears that in most cases, architecture is a passive and subservient spectator. Teleworking comes from ICT sector, autonomous vehicles from the automotive industry, smart cities and buildings from ICT and electrical industry. Most sustainable solutions in construction come from the construction materials industry. If the latter is still influenced by architecture, the others are completely unrelated to it. Why has architecture never designed a traffic light? As a test, I asked some IA machines to give me an image of a traffic light designed by an architect. And that is the reason. Yeah. However, architecture is interested in being integrated into the design of AI applications in construction and smart cities buildings. Well, I think here at least 2 of the interventions demonstrate the interest of architects in new production modes of and more productive modes of production of built environment. So I think maybe we architects, I'm not an architect, sorry, but the architects are in the good move. Well, I'm passing this. And this, it was a AI-generated history. Well, I'm not explaining why is William Shakespeare in the monkeys, Well, the third topic, introducing of AI tools in the architect's professional practice, is what we are doing in this symposium. You will let me develop something about it. This is a model based on something I developed many and many years ago for my PhD on electronic engineering for intelligent agents in smart space and buildings. I then adapted it for this symposium, adjusting it for the architectural practice. It's different, but always the same base, as it actually is a model of rationality, human or artificial. The model is nothing extraordinary. It may seem too complex, but it's very similar to most presented here. I saw many of your presentations, and well, the general ideas are almost the same. It gathered theories from psychology, stimuli, motivations, knowledge, decisions, nothing really new. Okay. Well, most of the living beings have a relation with its environment or world that is of actions over the world produced by stimuli of the world over the living being. The internal process is very simple: reflex, instincts, intuition, and so on. In humans and also artificial intelligent agents, the internal process is very complicated. The mental processes that mediate between stimuli and actions are grouped in 4 zones: word learning, society learning, action plan, and decision processes. That performs the sequence: stimulum triggers motivation, decision process tries to solve the problem with decision methods, immediate policies. If not, it consults the deductive learning machine for knowledge necessary for creating a solution, creates a plan of actions, and acts. The word learning process creates 2 knowledge bases: a body of socially consolidated theoretical knowledge, most of the time persistent, abstract, potential, and declarative, and a body of knowledge about the state of the world, volatile, concrete, and current. The learning process has three major pathways. Inductive, through the treatment of the empirical data that are acquired through the senses. The deductive, which transforms established knowledge into new knowledge. And acquired, which stores the exchange of knowledge between the various actors. Well, this is important because nobody refers to the acquired, but the acquired is the main exchange of information we have. It's transmitting information each other. What I acquire, it's transmitted to you, and socially, the most important information is socially based and transmitted without the need for each agent to proceed to his own induction and his own deduction. The results are the referred bodies of knowledge expressed in more or less formal language. This knowledge can have different characteristics according to its duration, of veracity, persistent or volatile, abstract. Well, I'm passing this. These various processes are also carried out at various paces. Those for creating theories is very slow, but the detection of the state of the world is functioning quickly and permanently. Well, the learning process of society reached a set of motivations. These motivations are usually expressed in the customer program or the brief. Then it's necessary to frame individual motivations on social motivations, which can be defined practically in the regulations, but which have many other ways of expressing themselves, for example, ideologies. The introduction of human or social motivation in the model is of the most importance. There is no decision based only on knowledge, on pure science. Actions are only triggered by motivations and are evaluated by motivations. Of course, knowledge influences motivation. For example, it's the science that asserts that some desire is feasible or not, and that, of course, certainly affects the motivation. Thus, it's right, who claims for values, human or social, in the agents of artificial intelligence? When they are not explicit, they are hidden, because it's not possible to decide what the evaluation / motivation. It's not good to be hidden. So the social motivation or personal motivation should be declared explicitly. Another thing, because it's there. There is no way not to be there. Another thing, the learning process learns an external thing that is human. That is humans. Well, that means that the agent learns what humans want, learns motivations, does not impose motivations. But architecture does not just accept the program of the client. First, because the client's brief is generally very incomplete, it can be expressed in multiple ways. For example, and in order of complexity, emotions, objectives, utilities, and policies. If you add the fact that societies are not consensuous but conflicting, in which there are different motivations in dispute, it's concluded that architecture must define many of the undeclared motivations and take sides between them. Just an example of what we say. The choice between an architecture for the society of waste or a sustainable architecture is on the table of contemporary ideological discussions. That an architect put his own motivations in the process, it's almost impossible to avoid. But it is very difficult to accept that an AI agent makes the same thing. The action plan is embodied in what usually called the project. Yes. The action plan is embodied in what is usually called the project, which is intended to be a plan of actions to be carried out by its executors, expressed in sufficiently consolidated language and dominated and dominated by the various stakeholders. Between the motivations and the state of the world on the one and the action plan on the other, there is no direct line, and it's precisely here that the most complex process appears. So that means that the human being is rational. He takes decisions. It's not a stimulus reaction or action immediate without a complex model of thinking. Well, it's that of decision. In a rational decision process, it is intended that the material action to be developed based on the project changes the external material environment to one that satisfies human motivations. Rationality is thus here defined as a methodology that effectively controls the production of futures. The various formal methods and AI tools in use in architecture are used in several points of this model. Yes, this is the first one, or two of them have already been mentioned above because they are on the frontier of architecture as an interface between all stakeholders and the mental design process. CAD, BIM, especially for the other technicians in the design and construction process. Its extensions of virtual presentation in near reality renderings and mixed realities as communication tools with the users of the built environment. CAM is also used to produce reduced model as a communication language between the various actors. All of these methods are widely used as means of communication between the various digital process and the architect himself. Well, in the area of learning, we have, for example, sensory acquisition and first semantic treatment of empirical data, tracking, mapping, computer video, photogrammetry, several sensors technologies, and so on and so on. Semantic treatment of empirical big data to more or less deep theoretical levels of the knowledge, AI machine learning techniques, and I will use this slide in a few moments. More formal language for storing information about the state of the world, BIM, GIS, various mapping technologies. Ontologies. This language can be semantically flattered with a grammar that allows simple semantics or can extend to language based on logic and allowing the organization of semantically advanced and complex theories. For example, what we call ontologies in computer science. Language suitable for certain theories. This language simultaneously combines knowledge of the world theories and adapted decision machines. Declarative semantics plus production machine, space syntax, agent-based, beam checker, structure, climate, fluid mechanics, traffic, and so on. In action, we have CAM that can transform a plan into concrete material construction actions, from building materials to large robotic building construction system. Well, the decision-making process is certainly the most important and complex and deserves a little more analysis efforts. In the decision-making process, we essentially have two different cycles, the synthesis and the validation cycles. In the synthesis cycle, there are machines that have production grammars for the project, such as processing, generative programming, parametricism, shape grammars, artificial intelligence machines. The importance of decision methods cannot be underestimated. because they are condensed from theories and motivations, easy to evaluate, because they have the form of production rules. That is, knowledge that is also time persistent, abstract, and potential as theories, but they are not declarative, but methodological, operational. Although less abstract and less general than theories, they are directly applicable and are much faster. That means that artificial agent, AI agent, have most of these logical apparatus, but when it acts, it's, well, the motivations and the change in the world go directly to those sorry, to those grammars of production of solutions. Those are very quick because they are already compiled from the other. For example, it's here that we put shape grammars or something. An example, when motivation, we are thirsty. Well, we are not going to the theories, see what are our physiology or biology and the quality of the materials to provide, well, something that could end our thirst. Well, we know because, well, our parents said when we were little that if you are thirsty, drink water. This is a grammar, a generative grammar applicated in a very simple case. We don't make all the reasoning each moment. We have rules. We call in these processes. Sorry. Well, for later. However, the production grammars can be very different in terms of semantic capacity. At a lower limit is, for example, the technique behind parametricism. The ability to automatically generate architectural forms. These automated shape production processes were a fashion within the architectural poetics of a few years ago and still retain their cultivators. Although they produce architectural forms, their decisions are not semantically oriented. The generated forms do not tend to respond to human motivations or states of the world and are not theoretically founded. They are practically only syntactic languages without any semantic settlement. There is a famous sentence from Chomsky that says, if you remember, sorry, it's there. Colorless green ideas sleep furiously. Well, this is a perfect English syntax. It obeys everything in the grammar, but says nothing to us. The semantic is zero, and that is the key point in those in this kind of tools. The production grammars. If we have a production grammar that produces only forms, is not has no relation, no semantic relation to nothing, to motivations, to the world. Well, they only produce forms. Of course, when we have a tool that produces ping, why we use the tool? Well, because it produces ping, and we perhaps we like ping. It's not too difficult to understand how ping could be important, but well, we must really believe that ping is not so important, and there are other things that we can do with those type of tools. Well, the question is not in the syntax. The question is, well, syntax are very important. I don't deny that, but the main importance is the semantics. Well, for example, Professor Wassim related that, yes, their own semantics and on their projects and their designs. But the important thing was the relationships, the relations between those concepts. They were semantically orientated. Of course, it's very difficult to create the semantics, all the semantics needed for to create the architecture. Well, we have in a moment. There are currently other attempts to implement synthetic methodologies, combining an explicit declarative semantics and a production machine that are independent of each other. For example, through the declaration of theories in ontologies with first-order logic, which allows complex theories. And then a concrete problem is introduced in the production machine, what is an AI logical inference machine, which queries the ontology and reaches the solution or solutions. These models are still under development. It's one of the models that we are working here on. The semantics of architecture is defined into ontologies. The ontology is, well, that kind of relations similar to graphs, but they are more complex because they provide information that we can that are established inside the language that is formal first-order logic. Well, first-order logic can have machines, already developed machines that are able to query the language, and we can obtain results. Well, but this development makes only in classes. Classes means well, the necessity of creating abstract concepts for the definition of architecture. We have already some 500 or 600 classes. And well, this is without talking about the individuals of each class. For example, when you are trying to say what are the relations into an hospital, we have the classes, very general classes that are the needs of space for, well, but we began a little earlier in the definition of what are the human activities, what are their space necessities, what are the necessities in the movement of the movements of those activities. What are the environmental characteristics that are needed to produce certain activities? What are the materials that can provide that type of environment, and so on, so that when we query this ontology, there is possibility to obtain a response that is a project. But, well, the complexity of defining the semantics of an hospital, it's very, very complicated. You know, this is the real problem, that it's not a syntax, because we have a lot of syntax possible, but, well, the work is seeing exactly how the world works or should work to get those well, to have a model, a mental model, an ontology of that reality. For example, in shape grammars, this is made not in declarative way, but in operative way, and where there are included, well, many rules that can observe already the necessities of the motivations and of the state of the world. We have here we saw presented many of those shape grammars, and they have already a lot of semantics included. Of course, the more semantics create better projects. Well, semantic, not so better, but a more limited number of solutions. Well, and here enters the other phase of the decision. Whatever the model in the synthesis process, the tendency is to produce a wide range of possible solutions. This is where the analysis cycle comes in. These solutions can be analyzed in terms of their quality based on theories that are much better founded than those of the synthesis process, and thus limited the number of projects to the best ones. These analysis methodologies are also suitable for validating the solutions proposed by the traditional manual work of architects. As mentioned above in the learning process, there are already well-established theories of construction. For example, those that are generally the responsibility of engineering, structures, climate, and so on, but also some especially architectural ones, like the space syntax, agent base, and so on. The big problem is that the theories only say how the world behaves, demonstrating fixed relations between diverse scientific quantities representing the world. It's not very difficult. Yes, it's difficult, but not so difficult as what I call methodologies to create a theory. The theory says that a future state of the world is some function T, a theory, that depends on the current state of the world and the action we do. But our problem is not that problem. We want the best action we can do to obtain a future. And that is called the methodology. It's an inverse function of the function theory. And it is very difficult generally to create an inverse. So we can analyze space with space syntax and see what are the qualities of the space. But it's very difficult to say, well, they give me a space that has these qualities. It's impossible to make that. So what we make is models, and then we analyze the models, and well, you see what is the best, what has the parameters we want to obtain. Well, so it's normally we have these two phases always, and this is true for also what the architect makes by hand. It's not necessary to be an AI machine to do that. Okay. Okay, I'm not now. Well, I'm not now related. Well, what I said before was artificial intelligence of the old school. What I call the deductive artificial intelligence. There are many classifications of schools in artificial intelligence. I prefer to divide those methodologies, not all, but they are mainly deductive, based on logic, based on grammars, on language theory, algebras, decision theory, well, many theories that, well, I say mainly logical. And then there are those based, and that makes expert systems are the operation, the tools that deal with that kind of science. Well, and then there is the second, based on diffuse logic and neural networks, is the fashion AI for the moment. And I'm referring now to that. Well, that is where I placed the machine learning. The machine learning in my scheme is something that receive data from sensorial acquisition. Well, it reads what the sensors give the machine learning to crunch, and then produces theoretical models of the world. Well, what does that mean? That creates some relations between data and some concepts, and that is very important. It's the machine learning that I use normally because I want to then work with the machines that I told you before. I want to be linear with deduction, with the logic. Well, but nowadays, there is a better, it's this one, that makes direct assumptions of sensorial acquisition, receives data, and give results for the final project. There is no reasoning understandable for the for any human. Well, what is this? If you see, this is not very different from what well, it's not very important now. It's not very different for what the first scheme we saw that represented the thinking of a human, of a non-human biological. It's complete flat semantics. Well, there are the entities, the concepts that exist are inputs and outputs. And in the middle, in our mind, our reasoning is completely flat. There is no semantics there, nothing. There is a lot of operations that we don't understand. It's a black box, we don't understand those. Well, I think this is, well, I'm measuring my words, but I think it is not the good path to get where we want. Because, well, we don't understand those. Maybe, and I confess that I accept that, in certain cases, this type of AI can obtain better results than the other AI that we understand. For example, in face recognition or in translation, well, I know that the old attempts to solve the problem are much worse than those of the new AI. Well, that should be discussed, but I don't doubt about that. But I have severe doubts that eliminating all the mental state of the interior of the reasoning, it's a good solution. For example, for us, we lost something that is traceability. We don't know why some decisions are taken. And in logical AI, it's the main topic. We know everything, why every decision was made, because it's a reasoning that is completely formalized. For example, we lose this, but we lost also what I think it's our way of reasoning. Some say that our way of reasoning is a neural network, but I say it's not. Our way of thinking is, well, I think well defined by a logicist. There was many discussions about what was reasoning and what was meaning, for example, meaning, the discussion about the meaning. Well, the best definition of meaning I have is from Rodolphe Carnap. It's a logicist of the end of second half of the 19th century. And he says that it's a mental construction that has two components. The sense is the semantic network, all the relations that one concept, I'm talking about the meaning of one concept. It's the conjunction of sense. It's the complete neural network of that concept inside the language. That means here, and then the referent. Sense and referent makes meaning. The referent is the relation of some of those concepts with the concepts of under language, or at the end with reality. Well, and that is our reasoning, and it's quite, and that reasoning is formalized in science. We have that reason since 200,000 years ago, since the beginning of the Homo sapiens, but now in our epoch we arrive to formalization, scientific formalization, and well, I think it's one of the greatest acquirements of a human being. Well, and that type of AI is destroying this and putting everything on the, well, I say intuition. Intuition is the contrary of formal. The formal is there somewhere in our. I have nothing about intuition. I think even that intuition, only with intuition, we can produce something that formality can't. The great discoveries, the most great discoveries were not formalized, because if they were formalized, they were discovered before in the formal process. But this is one very small utilization of intuition, because generally intuition is not good. In the 99% of the cases, well, we should have your reasoning. I think I said what I. Okay. Thank you.
I'm sure there are questions. Who wants to go first?
Thank you. I don't think I have a question, but maybe because I want to just poke you now, because it's just such an elaborate thing. And as you were talking about the different kind of components of this kind of, it seems to me more intuition there in the system, but there was the world learning. So there is the world, the current state of the world, right? That plus delta T gives you, let's say, the next state, plus your actions and the methodologies. And there is also the society learning in this too. And I think either now or in the near future, these two, I think in your presentation were more physical manifestations, right? They were representing, let's say, the reality of things, if I understood it correctly. What if these two elements are also part of some sort of diffuse simulation, let's say? What do you think it's going to happen in this system? Because you have them, you have in the middle the machine learning part, let's say, the AI, which feeds from the current state of the world as it is now, let's say. And also it was the learning. You said that we need to also kind of understand the learning in the society, which is the part that was there. At some point, within the realm of agentic AI, so everything is pretty much an AI agent doing different things in the world. And then maybe the world is also fabricated and being completely virtual, let's say, not virtual, but AI generated. What will happen when these two guys talk to the middle guy, which is all AI? What do you think it's going to be the state of the world then? I'm just asking something very I know it's, but I thought about it because you talked about the world and the society, but half of the society now, it's probably Twitter generated by bots, right?
Well,
And
it-
half of the world might be in a bit because we have Sora, the video engine, or a week ago there was an AI generated game engine. So you give it a picture, an image of it, and creates a whole world with interaction and basic physics that is all generated. So the world perception and the world calculation, let's say, is completely fabricated as well. It could be, or it could be, let's say. What do you think?
well, I must say that philosophical, I'm a materialist. So I'm interested in the material world, that which I include the physical and natural world and the social world, and they work outside of our minds, and they work without our minds. They don't need our minds, but our minds need the world and society. So, although those type of experiments are very useful for research, for example, games and many other things, well, I think architecture can use that as pedagogical or instrumental or something, but it's not the real thing we are trying to address. It's the real life of the populations. It's the real world that exists, and not a model of the world. We have all the interest to produce models of the world that are akin, a fine of the real world.
The mind gets the illusion. It's very easy to trick the mind, believing that it's there.
Yes, but we historically we know that we can intellectually see that those errors of the mind. It's in the psychology, in the first book of psychology. Well, we can see that those type of errors of the mind can be easily, for humans, well, some of them not, but most of them, yes. We can retire essences of phenomenon, and we can see that the phenomenon is not the real thing. We are misunderstanding by a simple intellectual, and when we make great, better intellectual well, reasonings, we know that that is not correct. Well, but it's something I would like to. Sometimes in my mail appears. It's because of you. I think it's funny. The creation of artificial words in science. I receive, well, I don't know, but sometimes emails from those recording societies, ResearchGate, academia, and so, asking if I wrote that paper. Well, I didn't wrote that paper. But I look at it, I see. Yes, the title, it could be something that was made by me. And I think when you make a paper by AI, appears a series of references that are false. I think they are published in academia and so on. And then academia asks, I think in those kind of repositories, there is, it's been created a bubble of artificial things that does not exist in fact. And the fake reference other fake reference. I don't know where this is going to finish. It's only because I think it was funny you referring an artificial.
It's exactly what it's
I have another kind of sort of thought experiment question, maybe. because I agree very much with you. Let's say what is kind of problematic is that it's a black box. We don't really know. It performs well, but we don't know what's happening in between. That was kind of what you ended up with. Is going from, let's say, that AI jumps over all the logic so we don't understand the mechanisms anymore, which is kind of problematic because that means that we have to do trial and error. If we want to intervene, that's because in the end we are architects, we intervene. So could, let's say if we think the next level of AI, could it be that we can actually ask also what the mechanisms are? Because it could also be that actually, so now it's a black box, but maybe we can unpack the black box with the help of AI. Could you react on that?
No, I think, yes. I present there a position. I position there some machine learning that I think it's very useful. But it's a sort of statistical interpretation of multitude of data. And we have some control on that because we are trying to read big data and obtain concepts. And I think it's very important. If we have no concepts, we have no our human reasoning. We reason with concepts, not with bytes, bits, and so on. It's concepts that we think with. Someone said that machine learning it's the second best tool for solving everything. We could ask, why would we like to use the second best tool? Why not the first best tool? Well, the first best tool is adapted to a problem. We have a best tool for this problem, a best tool for that problem, and the best tool for the other problem. And we have a machine that solves every problem. It's not so nice as the first, but it's very easy to use. And I think we are using that machine of the most weird way, because it's easy and we don't have to think. When we ask the machine to relate data and obtain concepts, I think that is very, very useful. And in that way, I think, yes. For example, one of Tasso's pupils presented on one space syntax conference something like this. Relate the pixels of the black and whites of a space and create the color pixels of a space syntax analysis by AI. Well, after some tests, obtain almost the same results as space syntax using only neural networks. He didn't understand nothing. And well, space syntax we understood. We know, we understand what is space syntax, why that results are important, what they, but you can obtain almost the same without understanding anything. Well, he said, oh, this is better because it's much quicker than your program. Well, you can say relate pixels with pixels, but if we, in the work that we produced, we obtained big data from video cameras with computer video. And we made some paths of pedestrians on one street. And we tried to obtain results. It's not other pixels there. To understand, for example, if we can differentiate the pedestrians, if he is a tourist, if he's something is shopping, if someone is straight through, and so on. And and we relate what with the data that we have, velocity, we had positions, sometimes so we could get the velocity. We could see the deambulatory path of the, and so if we make this, we can obtain some results. We can obtain the behavior of the Porto pedestrian, the typical, or some variations of some types of pedestrians and so on. Well, this, we are creating reasonings, we are creating concepts. I think this is very, very useful.
Thank you. I just have a comment to add in this discussion, because I think the current issue is that nowadays we have machine learning models that are capable of doing extremely fascinating, I mean, they're extremely accurate. But the issue that is that in certain disciplines like medicine, or let's say, even in economics like banks, rely on machine learning models to decide whether you are allowed to get a loan or not. So although the models are working, people now cannot actually implement them because it is not ethical, because they cannot actually resonate. Why did you reject or accept it? So there's an upcoming field that has gained lots and lots of attention during, I guess, last 2 years, XAI, so it's explainable AI, and they're figuring out techniques, which is not about understanding why it resonates, but it gives like counterfactuals, and it tells you like, why didn't you do it? And it tells you that if you have done this differently, I could have accepted to get you the loan. So, but people are really, really paying attention into that. And I think it's the next big thing that's gonna.
It doesn't understand what is happening within a deep neural network kind of. It works on simpler regression type models and not classes.
So, well, there is a, there is a, well, deep learning is used mostly for that kind of artificial intelligence where you obtain concepts, intermediate concepts. So you are not only doing the connectionist thing through all the steps, but you obtain concepts through the steps. So there is some kind of reasoning. Well, of course, artificial, but this is, well, I think when we use artificial intelligence, we use that that method of research that we call the hypothetic deductive. We make hypotheses, and you are going to test also with the connectionist tool.
Okay.
I just wanted to kind of, there's a recent book which talks about AI, and it's called AI snake oil or something. And it's about where AI fails actually, and there's a lot of talk about it. And they have given examples specifically wherein they have trained an AI model using X-ray images for COVID patients. And what the neural network actually learned was that it did not learn anything from the X-rays, but it learned more from the age distribution of patients. And if you give a X-ray, it would, the features that it learned was that if you are younger, your probability of having COVID was lesser. And it had nothing to do with what a pulmonologist would see within an X-ray. And that's what I think Franklin was also trying to tell. If let me ask a question. Okay. Sorry. So I was really interested about the work that you're doing in ontologies, specifically for buildings. And there are specific ontologies that are already kind of existing and standardized. So I just wanted to understand more as to what kind of ontologies are you working on? So is it something similar to building topology ontologies or bricks, which are already there standardized, or is it something beyond that?
You say more general classes needed for, well, the ontologies we are constructing are direct to automation of design. So, well, each ontology is proposed. There is no general ontology. So we must adapt that to the machine that will, the logical machine that after must query the ontology. The ontology is declarative. It has nothing. Only we put there information. And then we have to make a machine that asks things to the ontology. Well, there are standard machines, but well, it's very difficult to a standard machine of query of a first order logic to give you an architectural design, an architectural project. It's very difficult. It's impossible, I would say. So we have to create that machine that.
Creating the machine, but I was talking from the other side. There are standard ontologies already there for buildings. So are we kind of extending that in your work, or?
We have to make be very critical about those ontologies because, for example, the ontologies present on IFCs or BIM and so on. Those are not directed to the work of the architect, mainly to the construction industry or the owners of the buildings and so on. But for example, space is something that is somehow alien of the BIM industry. Space is a basic concept, a basic class in the architectural. So if you want to construct something, we could go there because it's very physical. But architecture is very abstract, not so physical. Although at the end of the day, there is something that is constructed. But it's only at the end of the day because I think the architectural reasoning is very abstract.
Well, thank you for a presentation, first of all. My question is a lot more basic than those ones that came before, and it focuses more on the first part of your presentation. My question is about the impact of all this great research that was presented in the symposium, and obviously all the things that you talked about as the way the AI and all these technologies work. A lot of this work is dependent on advancements of technology that, as we all know, is a monopoly of a handful of countries, and mainly in the so-called West. However, for one part, the West already has its own problems. For example, as we all know, there are complicated social issues which make the socio-economic environment very distrustful of science, and we see that every day. And for example, one of these things is the gentrification, is the example you gave earlier in the other keynote. But the problem for the European countries is not so much about the need for urban expansion as it is, for example, housing access. And there is in the parts that need urban expansion, there's not, like we do have in the West, a very reasonable number of architects. For example, in Europe, there are lots of architects, I believe, though mostly badly paid. For example, in Portugal, they earn more or less 1,000 euros. However, the demographic expansion is happening mainly outside of Europe. For example, in South Asia, South America, and Africa. As an example, it is projected that the population in Lagos, Nigeria, is going to grow to 50 million people. These expansions represent far larger challenges than those we have in here, I believe. It's 5 times the population of Portugal in a city. But for one part, those countries are legitimately distrustful of rich countries and might not be interested in depending on hardly reproducible technology and know-how. On the other hand, the other rich countries ignore that this problem, ignore the problems that these countries are facing, as we've seen in this year's COP. They also ignore the potential voices and solutions they might bring and teach us, the global South. How can we bridge these enormous gaps? And as all these problems become global and the countries interdependent, share and use all these technology and tools and these really important techniques for our collective good. Should that be that with the use of, as you call, the old AI, that is not a black box, that can be understood and examined? Should that be the way, for example, for creating an environment of trust for solving these large and collective problems? Or should we just believe that, for example, something like this AI that no one can understand, even less the countries that have no access to these technologies, should just trust that good is going to happen? Sorry.
It was a problem. It's a problem that transcends architecture by much. But well, you saw in my first part of the presentation, I said that the Global South is participating now in the world economy with, well, a situation that is not the same as 20 or 30 or any. For example, and we have here people, and it's good that we discuss these problems because they have not our problems. They have other problems. For example, they construct Asia, for example, must construct 30 or 40 times the buildings than in Europe. The problem is not the same. And I would say a little more, where is the center of architecture? Is where it's of course where 30 or 40 or 80% of the buildings are. We know very, very little about those realities. But these meetings, and we have here, I think in our symposium only we have nobody from Oceania. But from the other continents we have presences and we are discussing. I think this is the way we must. The science is good for everyone. Of course, there are owners of science. We saw in the COVID. Well, there were some companies that have COVID vaccine, and they did, for example, the government of India and South Africa asked to open the copyrights, the rights, and they didn't accept. Of course, we know these, but I would say that if we say that the research and science in the Global South is it's not at the same level as, for example, Europe is, I think it's not anymore the case. We have here from Singapore, for example, well, the work of Rudy and its university, it's amazing, and it's not by no means less important than what is made on Chalmers, for example. And well, I think Well, there is not anymore one center. There are many centers, and I think our obligation is to collaborate with each other for the development of everybody. The win-win situation. Of course, it's not easy, but I think we should have this aim.